Ferrari's momentum from Melbourne seems to have carried the team in a direction they couldn't have hoped for a couple of days ago, and the team is likely to speed up the process of bringing upgrades to the SF-24 to Suzuka. This is the race in which the RB20 will also undergo massive changes with its design, amid increased risk that they could get it wrong with the new sidepod design and inlets. So the question arises, can Ferrari repeat their success in Suzuka, and more importantly, is the championship battle back? After a dominant 1-2 win in a race that saw Verstappen not finish a race for the first time in 2 years, Ferrari is now looking to continue the strong pace and speed up the upgrades to Suzuka. One of the primary reasons why they want to bring this is because they do have a very solid basis to work on with the SF-24, which was proven throughout the last couple of races, and unlike the previous seasons, they don't need to wait and see what will happen. Quite the contrary, they cannot miss out on any race's potential, and Suzuka does seem like the perfect track in which they can replicate the success from Melbourne. Ferrari have just confirmed that in the upcoming race in Suzuka, upgrades will come to the SF-24 in a bit of a speed-up process that will be followed up with another massive upgrade package in Imola. Now, even though Verstappen was out of the race due to a mechanical failure, with Marco and Perez having different opinions as to whether or not the outcome would have been the same with the Dutchman on the grid, Ferrari are convinced that they're now much closer to Red Bull than they would have originally planned in the beginning of the season. Of course, it took 2 races in order for them to evaluate the nature of the car, and right from the third one, it seems like it's the proper one to bring upgrades to, which is why a huge part of the Imola upgrades have been pushed for the Suzuka weekend on the 7th of April. The nature of the upgrades are still to be confirmed, but given the downforce requirements of this track and the current regulations, it's very likely that they will revolve around the sidepod design as well as the nature of the floor. This can also be concluded because it's exactly these parts that brought zero to no progress to the car whenever Ferrari tried to do something different with it in the past 2 years due to the construction flaws that the chassis had. Now that's changed, Ferrari are optimistic that they can further boost the performance of the car due to the fact that the Maranello team has high hopes revolving around these parts. When talking about this matter in a further extent, Frédéric Vasseur went on to say, "We've been quick all weekend right from the first free practice. I think we made a good step forward compared to where we were 1 year ago, when we left Melbourne having failed to score points. We were not disappointed with our results in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, nor are we getting carried away because of this 1-2 finish. However, we must continue with this approach in the coming races because that's the only way we're going to get the results we want." Now, it's very important to mention that even if Verstappen was in the race, Ferrari would have been very good and probably kept him busy from behind due to the fact that their tyre degradation has improved a lot in Melbourne. This is a fact that even Red Bull acknowledged, and with the nature of the Suzuka high-speed corners, we're expecting a lot of cars to struggle with this particular problem, which is why the Maranello team might want to push the upgrades a bit earlier and learn a thing or two about the car before the remainder of the season comes by. What's also interesting to see is how the Ferrari will compete against McLaren, because at certain parts of the Melbourne GP, it seemed like the MCL38 was quite competitive and breathing at the back of Leclerc's car. Of course, the number 1 target would be Verstappen, and with the new upgrades that Red Bull are bringing to Imola, Ferrari are looking for an opportunity to shake things up and provide yet another bombshell of a race in order to prove that the championship battle is all but over. The nature behind this can be easily understood. Red Bull are risking a lot with their new approach that should be implemented in Suzuka and further developed in Imola, and unlike Ferrari, they're entering into something unknown with it. Adrian Newey has made it quite known that the new design of the Red Bull is something that could push the team in the wrong direction because they were forced into it thanks to the success of its predecessor. And Ferrari do have a platform that they understand much better now, so with proper upgrades, they could cut the gap to Red Bull significantly. Even if Suzuka does not prove to be quite the expectation that Ferrari would have with these upgrades, we mustn't forget the massive package they have prepared for Imola. A large part of it will revolve around the floor, which could have been easily understood due to the fact that both drivers felt very comfortable with the SF-24 and understood that the generation of downforce would be much more stable now, unlike in the previous 2 years. This is where Red Bull managed to extract massive amounts of performance compared to its rivals in the past 2 years, and with the SF-24 being the first team to embrace the full downwash concept fully, they've opted for a unique compromise in order to achieve this strong foundation to develop their car in a better direction. Now, one of the main issues that Ferrari would try to solve in Suzuka and further improve in Imola is gain aerodynamic efficiency of the car while keeping it stable at the same time. The greatness of the upgrades planned for Imola goes to the extent of Ferrari saying that it will be a 2.0 version of their car due to the massive rework on the body as well as the macro areas on the car. The large DRS areas that have been adopted thanks to the new rear wings will also help with the aerodynamic performance of the car, and this is very important because it enables Ferrari to pursue large and bold steps without being worried that something of a barrier will come up between these upgrades being implemented on the car. Of course, this is the primary issue for Mercedes, the team that cannot synchronize the results from their car in the wind tunnel and on the track. And luckily for Ferrari, they've dodged a bullet by the competitiveness of the newly designed W15. Again, the MCL38 is also scheduled for some huge upgrades in Imola, but the primary target is to beat Red Bull, or more precisely Verstappen, because if we are to judge by the performance of Perez in Melbourne, even though he sustained damage from Alonso's visor on his floor and had impaired downforce generation, was 40 seconds behind the leading pack of the Maranello team. But why Suzuka? And can Ferrari give us yet another pleasant surprise that is not filled with false hope for the remainder of the 2024 season? Obviously, the high-speed corner nature of the track does seem challenging to overcome. But regardless of that, Ferrari will bring a piece of the upgrades they plan for Imola's massive overhaul here in Suzuka in order to see whether they can boost the performance of their car for the next race as well. Due to the fact that the Chinese GP is a sprint event weekend, teams will try to avoid bringing upgrades because they won't be able to extract the maximum potential out of it. But Suzuka, on the other hand, does seem like a proper track in which the car could improve even further, starting from the rear wing. This is a part that had a new version of itself being promoted in Melbourne, and it was practically the first upgrade that the Maranello team brought in 2024. However, it's worth mentioning that prior to its introduction, Ferrari were heavily criticised for their overly conservative approach of the SF-24. Now, when we look at their plan for Suzuka and Imola, it's evident that maybe for the first time in 3 years, Ferrari knows exactly what they're doing, and they could be expecting huge results because unlike Mercedes, the results from the wind tunnel correlate massively with what the car proves on the track. Now, another interesting question that Ferrari needs to answer, more precisely, their drivers will be put under a huge challenge, would be the competitiveness between each other. As of now, it seems like the departing driver in Sainz has the upper hand against Leclerc, and if this continues and Ferrari has a genuine shot at the championship, Sainz could be compromised due to the fact that he'll be restricted of sensitive information regarding around the development of the car, something he could find very frustrating if he turns out to be the better driver compared to Leclerc throughout the entire course of the season. Well, with all this in mind, do you think that Ferrari has what it takes to turn this aerodynamic performance battle in their own favour? And more importantly, do you think that the changes are working and we're going to see a lot more competitiveness out of Leclerc and Sainz in 2024? Let us know in the comments down below.